We're back to it. Yeah. Yeah. We're back to it. Back to it. Back to it. Yeah. We're back to it. Back to it. Back to it. Yeah. We're back to it.
AFT delegates, please welcome AFT Massachusetts President Beth Contos.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Massachusetts. Boston's a great city. I hope you're staying here long enough to enjoy more than the convention center, right? Look at you all. I'm happy to be here with all of you after a very tumultuous, really, it's been 4 years since we were together in 2018, right? If I had known then what we were in for when we said goodbye in Pittsburgh, maybe I would have hugged my friends a little longer. Oh, I heard Pittsburgh over there. And maybe I would have sent you home with an extra cup of Dunkin' Donuts, right? Because that's what we drink around here. I know you see Starbucks in the hall, but on every corner, leave the seaport, you're going to see a Dunks on every corner. Every gas station, every corner store. That's what we drink. If I had known then what was ahead of us, I would have told you to take a deep breath and brace yourselves, because things were about to get pretty tough. Were they tough? This past several years, right? I would have also told you to keep your heads up and stick together, keep fighting, and not to worry, because by the end, we were going to rack up some huge wins. All because we are too committed to our communities and to each other to do anything different, right? That's right. Now, I'm not minimizing the losses, okay? Since I saw you last, we have won protections for our educators, our support staff, our healthcare workers, our librarians, and our public employees in the face of dangerous government neglect during a once-in-a-century pandemic. But we won a history-changing presidential election. We watched a teacher become the Secretary of Education, because that makes sense, doesn't it? That's right. Put a teacher in charge. And our very own former mayor of Boston became Secretary of Labor, because it makes sense to put a labor guy in charge of the Department of Labor. And we continue to stand up and fight for the academic freedoms of our librarians, our higher ed members, and every single one of us who believes that teaching the truth makes us a better nation. And that celebrating this country's immense accomplishments and taking responsibility for its atrocities does not diminish us, because our history isn't finished yet. Because we aspire to create a better, brighter, more equitable democracy for everyone. And that includes the Native American tribes who have been stewards of the land, the air, the water, the animals surrounding us for more than 12,000 years. Right now, I want to acknowledge that this land is the territory of the Massachusetts, the Wampanoag, and their neighboring eastern Algonquin tribes. As we stand here, we acknowledge the violations of sovereignty they have suffered for more than 4 centuries. We acknowledge their continued battles for self-rule. We do this because we are telling the truth about our past as part of reclaiming our future. Now I have a friend here I want to introduce you to, the Reverend Vernon K. Walker, who is the Program Director of Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, also known as CREW, for those of you in the Boston area. And he's also a committed social justice activist in our community. We got the Reverend Walker, come on up.
Good morning. It is a beautiful morning this morning. I am elephant happy and peacock proud to be here with you in this beautiful community in Boston, the Seaport District. And for many of you that don't know, the Seaport District is relatively new. If there was ever a time to come together and to be in community with each other, these are certainly the times. Recently, quite recently, in fact, we have seen a surge in violence gripping our country with more mass shootings happening by the week. Loss of human life reported daily when we watch the news stations, and here in Boston it's Channel 5, NBC Boston, and even when we look on social media. This, along with several Supreme Court decisions that has impacted our government's ability to regulate power plant carbon emissions, failure to reaffirm New York's stringent gun laws, and even striking down Roe versus Wade, it seems like it's hopeless to work with students to ensure that they take a path in life that will help them create a more just and equitable society. For all the teachers, assistants, secretaries, bus drivers, and all of employees represented by the American Federation of Teachers, I just really stopped by to remind somebody that no matter how dark the night, hopeless the situation, your work is vital to ensure that future generations can believe in hope. Realistically speaking, I know these are dark and trying times. However, it is only when it's dark at night that you can see the stars shine brightly. In your roles that you occupy, you are helping to push a generation that will rise and believe that our society needs a moral revival rooted in love of God's creation and love for our fellow human beings. Until those children, our children, become adults, it is our responsibility as adults and leaders to proclaim the fight for the promise of a better America that accepts all people, that respects the decision of women to choose, that leads by example on the fight for climate change, that stands up against the prison industrial complex, and fight for accessible quality health care and much more. Sisters and brothers, if we're going to do this, we're going to need strength and fortitude from on high. In the Christian tradition, the Bible tells us that God is a present help in the time of need. The Bible informs us that all things are possible to them that believe. And I believe that prayer is essential for the fight for justice. It is in that vein and it is in that trajectory. Let us pray. Oh God of heaven, we're glad that you woke us up this morning with the activity of our limbs and the faculties of our mind. We are living in some difficult and dangerous times, some strange times. However, we know that when things get difficult, faith can help us see our way through danger. I'm praying for everybody in this convention that this will be an opportunity to do a recommitment to hope, justice, and love for the profession, love for working with kids, and believing in the ability to fight for a more just world. So many people here today and in the world call you by many different names and many different faith traditions. However, we know that the one salient characteristic you possess is love. We know that you are love, God, and we know that those that know not love know not God. We know that the greatest commandment found in the gospel tradition is for people to love you with all their hearts, minds, and soul, and for human beings to love one another as they love themselves. Help us to be reminded that loving each other in the spirit of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is what we should strive for. Strengthen us in our fight for a more just America and a more just world. Many in this building are working with young folks that will be a part of the social justice movement. Help give the members that are a part of the American Federation of Teachers the strength to have a productive convention and a safe school year commencing in September. It is in your precious holy name that we ask these things, your marvelous, majestic, and wonderful name, that we believe in the strength to continue to fight for a more just America. And everybody in this building from the left to the right said amen, amen, amen. So it be. Thank you. And I now have the privilege to introduce Ms. Treva Burke-Harrell and Dr. Edward Robinson as they lead us in two songs, The Star-Sprinkled Banner and Lift Every Voice and Sing. Will you stand with me so we can enjoy this rendition? And we're so glad that you're here.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the
Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have now we ever meet, true to our God, true to our native land. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, yet with a steady beat have now we met at last, true to our God, true to our native land. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on our way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the night, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hands, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Thank you.
AFT delegates, please give a warm welcome to the President of the Boston Teachers Union, Jessica Tang.
When I say AFT, you say proud. AFT! 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 Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Tang, and I'm proud not just to be a vice president of the of the AFT, but also to serve as the president of the Boston Teachers Union. And at the BTU, we like to say BTU. And when it comes to hosting you all in our city and welcoming you to Boston for the 87th Convention of the American Federation of Teachers, we are definitely all in. Because Boston is not just the home of champion sports teams, it is the birthplace of public education, including America's oldest schools, like the Boston Latin School, established in 1635. We're also home to the nation's oldest elementary school, the Mather School, and the nation's oldest public high school, English High. And yes, we say the before the names of our schools. It's a Boston thing. And we are proud to have not just educators, but also even alum amongst our delegates here at the convention. And while we are proud of our history of public schools here, our public schools are a public good that, just like our democracy, cannot be taken for granted. And much like many of you, we've been fighting tough fights to defend the public good and defend public education. fights against privatization, fights against undemocratic state takeovers, fights for key student-centered improvements, for health, for safety, and for so much more that we know are essential to ensure that our students have schools they deserve. And over the last few months, our district has been threatened repeatedly with the potential of a misguided, unnecessary, unproven, and undemocratic state receivership. It was a threat that would have taken away local control and would have replaced it with top-down decision-making, meaning no local input, no educator input, no collective bargaining, and virtually no voice for our students, communities, or families. And this threat was being made despite the state failing to demonstrate any progress in other districts where it imposed these exact same kinds of controls. In every case, these receivership plans or threats posed by receivership were a distraction from the urgent need to make greater public investments in our schools and the need to give a greater share of voice to educators, students, and the community. And this was all in the midst of our educators doing their best to recover and heal from an ongoing pandemic and holding down our schools over the last 3 years, during which we had 3 mayors, 3 school committee chairs, and what will now be our 5th superintendent in 6 years. But I have good news to share this morning. Not only were we able to fight back the threat of state intervention twice in the past few months, I'm sharing publicly today that after working over 11 months without a contract, just yesterday, we were able to reach a tentative agreement that will help us to create the schools our students and educators deserve. Despite the challenges so many of us are facing, we know that when we fight, none of this, however, would have been possible without our students, parents, families, and community allies organizing, mobilizing, and building power with us. And I cannot underscore enough the importance of meaningful, long-term community building, particularly in an era of so much divisiveness. We were also able to get this work done because we have leaders in this city who believe in the power of labor and believe in the power of real relationships and the importance of building trust. And that includes the fierce advocacy of our city's mayor, Michelle Wu, who did not back down from a fight with the state and showed up not just once, but no less than 3 times to testify before the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to defend local community control and take a stand with educators, parents, and students to say that this is our city and our schools. And we have the solutions. So in the 7 short months she has been mayor, she has already made historic commitments to a Green New Deal for Boston Public Schools, a new commitment to early education, and now a new agreement with our union to set our district on the right path. I began my remarks talking about history. Well, Mayor Wu is a maker of history herself as the first woman and first person of color ever to be elected as the mayor of the city of Boston. So it is now my honor to introduce the mayor of Boston. Please give a warm welcome to Mayor Michelle Wu.
Give it up for our incredible president of the Boston Teachers Union, Jessica Tang. I am so honored to be here with you all this morning. I'm so grateful to Jessica for her very warm introduction, but most of all for her leadership, her partnership, and that of our local members here in making this morning's announcement possible, and in making all of the advances and progress that we have seen in our district in not just the last 7 months, but over decades possible for our city. Jessica mentioned some ways in which I have been able to help redefine what leadership looks like in our city, but she left out one bit that is quite important to me. I take very seriously that I am the first mom ever elected to the city of Boston's mayor. And that when we talk about schools, when we talk about our public schools, I'm talking about my 2 kids. I'm talking about my boys who are proud students at the Sumner School, and all of their peers, all of their friends, all of the incredible educators that have shaped and continue to shape their lives. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for organizing. Thank you for standing up for little ones like mine and so many across our city in fighting back against state receivership efforts, in demanding that we get to the point where we are today, recognizing that our local communities know the issues best and have the solutions to deliver the change that we need. I am so excited about the ways in which this new agreement with the Boston Teachers Union clears the way for our school system to take meaningful steps to support our educators and help transform the experience for students across all of our communities, for transforming what inclusion looks like in our schools, for students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and all of our families. The agreement also provides parental leave, guarantees that most basic of supports for the BTU for the first time ever. Long overdue. And it extends a pilot program with the city to identify housing for unhoused Boston Public Schools families. It continues to maintain as a baseline the ratio of crucial support staff like guidance counselors, school psychologists, and social workers throughout the life of this contract. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone who was part of making this agreement possible, and for demonstrating that when we're given the time and opportunity to listen to the needs of all of our stakeholders, our students and educators, our families, we can deliver the change that our communities deserve now. On that note, welcome to Boston. Thank you so much to President Randi Weingarten, Secretary-Treasurer Ingram, Executive Vice President De Jesus, and the AFT Vice Presidents for the opportunity to kick off this convention today. I want to recognize that I'm joined here today by the chair of our Boston School Committee, Jerry Robinson. Thank you for your incredible leadership. And I know I spotted at least one city councilor, so thank you to at least City Councilor Erin Murphy, but I'm sure others of my colleagues in government are here as well. Thank you for your service. We are thrilled to be able to host the important work of the AFT right here in the birthplace of public education, as Jessica mentioned. This history and the historic role of our schools in shaping our country's trajectory is a reminder of the monumental power and opportunity entrusted to our educators. 5 of the students at that oldest first public school that Jessica mentioned, 5 of those students went on to sign their names to the Declaration of Independence. At its very best, education should always be revolutionary. It should inspire our students to question inequity, detest injustice, and demand a freer, fairer world from all of us. These are the ideals that the AFT embodies. Your advocacy for social and economic justice extends far beyond your membership. You fight not only for the educators and substitute teachers, the paraprofessionals, librarians, ABA specialists, family liaisons, sign language interpreters who keep our schools running and make up your ranks. You're also fighting for all of our families, for all of our children, for all of our school communities and our cities. Across the country, your locals are on the front lines, fighting for our future, the future of education in this country, and most recently, for basics like representation and historical accuracy in our curricula. Today's educators are no longer just responsible for nurturing the hearts and minds of our young people. You're charged with protecting them like never before. And you've been telling us that our young people cannot be equipped to build a brighter future if they don't understand our past. that our students will never learn to stand up for what's right if we don't teach them what we've gotten wrong. That young people can't be expected to learn if they don't have stable housing, food, and access to the care that all of us deserve. You have been telling us that their future, all of our futures, depend on the progress we secure today. That the working conditions of our teachers and staff are the learning conditions of our students, and that both are critical to where we go from here. That's why in Boston, we're working with urgency to support our BPS communities by improving those conditions in every way that we can. As you heard a few months ago, we announced our Green New Deal for the Boston Public Schools. We know that the built environment, the spaces where we learn and work every day, have an enormous impact on our lives. And so we are overhauling our infrastructure to ensure that all of our students, all of our educators have access to a world-class space and world-class facilities. In the coming years, we'll be renovating our BPS facilities, starting with those in the most immediate condition. In the first phase, we're putting forward $2 billion to make sure that we are delivering the renovations urgently, so Boston families are sending their children to schools they're comfortable with, and you all are going to work in the places that you can be proud of. These are improvements that the BTU and our BPS communities have been calling for decades, and I'm glad that the city is now finally answering that call. We also know what our students are putting into their bodies. The foods that fuel their learning and development play just as critical a role in determining their educational outcomes. That's why in May, we announced a $17 million contract with a local business, City Fresh Foods, to provide nutritious, culturally relevant, fresh cooked meals for all of our students. Is that Mr. McGuire? Okay, yep. I went to lunch with Mr. McGuire a number of years ago at BLA, and I always make sure to, we'll go to lunch again this year and celebrate the new meals. This also happens to be the largest non-construction contract the city has ever awarded to a Black-owned business, and one with an employee ownership model. We're not just redefining school lunches, we're working to close the racial wealth gap by investing in businesses led and run by our community members. We're also working to close gaps for our students and families through early college and innovation pathways and tuition-free community college in partnership with our local universities. And as a result of Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley's advocacy, we recently celebrated the expansion of this program with $1 million in federal funding. These funds will seed our federal recovery funds that just passed the City Council yesterday, thank you, Councilor Murphy, which will go toward expanding this program and stabilize the ability to increase wages for early childhood educators and workforce training programs. We're making these investments in our students and teachers because we know that our students' futures aren't determined in college or even high school, and that the most critical investments we can make happen at the earliest stages of their lives. The ripple effects that happen when we put our money where our mouth is makes a difference to all of our communities. Last week, we also celebrated a $20 million new investment in early childhood education through the Boston Public Schools and UPK. With this funding, we're expanding universal pre-K to provide even more seats for 3- and 4-year-olds throughout our city, and bringing our family childcare programs into the fold of our existing network to ensure that immigrant and low-income families have flexible, language-accessible, culturally appropriate options for early education and childcare. Just yesterday, the federal recovery package added another $15 million to those efforts. We've made these investments from our buildings to our meals, from our littlest learners to our high school and college students, because we know that providing a quality education demands investment. It means taking a holistic, expansive view of developing our students into happy, healthy, thoughtful, and supported members of our communities. And we can't do that unless we hold ourselves as a city to the highest possible standard by delivering the highest quality supports and resources to our young people and those who are educating them. I want Boston to be known as the greenest city in America, the most family-friendly city in America, and our administration as the one that staked our legacy on the future of our kids. We need your help in doing so, and we need your partnership. So I want to thank you for joining us here in Boston, for the truly heroic work that you're doing every day to raise brave, compassionate, motivated young people in a world where our need for them grows more urgent every day. Thank you for all you're doing. Have an inspiring and productive conference, and I look forward to the work ahead. Thank you.
And now to welcome you to the Bay State, the President of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, Steve Tolman.
Good morning, sisters and brothers. Let me ask you, are we lucky to have a great mayor or what, huh? On behalf of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO Executive Council and the entire Massachusetts labor movement, I welcome all of you to the great state of Massachusetts. Not only is Massachusetts one of the proudest union states in the country, but we are a state of firsts. As you all know, we were the first public education, public school, the first public parks, the first public libraries, and the first state to mandate public education right here in Massachusetts. Sisters and brothers, we're also the home of the revolution, including Paul Revere's famous ride that we all learned about in history. And if you travel around our city in the North End, they have the Old North Church where he actually hung the light. You studied that in history. One of the things they probably didn't tell you is that Paul Revere actually built the colony of Massachusetts for his midnight ride. Over at the JFK and the EMK Institutes right over at University of Massachusetts is the Commonwealth Museum. And on display in that museum is the actual itemized invoice that Paul Revere gave to the colony of Massachusetts that covered his time and his horse's time. So to me, sisters and brothers, that reinforces the point that all labor should be paid, even revolutionary activities. Speaking of revolutionaries, I want to thank our great President Randi Weingarten, whom I've admired for years, a rock star in our labor movement. Her commitment to our trade union movement, sisters and brothers, is a lantern for all union members. And let us remember that AFT is not just the union of teachers, but you have, whether it's assistant teachers, secretaries, bus drivers, custodians, food service workers, it goes on from early childhood educators, higher education faculty, graduate assistants, nurses and healthcare professions, including doctors, and state and local government employees. And the principle of standing in solidarity with one another through the struggles animates how our national president, Randi Weingarten, has led this nation and led her union with the most integrity. And all of you are the benefit of that, and she has inspired so many great leaders through the American Federation of Teachers as well. Sisters and brothers, last summer, the National AFL-CIO lost a giant, Rich Trumka, who was a mine worker and a giant in the labor movement, passed away suddenly in August 5th while hunting with his camping with his grandchildren. And in every heartache, there's a silver lining. And his secretary treasurer, Liz Schuler, was elected temporary AFL-CIO president, and then just last month in Philadelphia, unanimously they elected Liz Schuler, and you will be hearing from her tomorrow, I believe. Remember her, she's going to take over our labor movement. She's going to do what has to be done to make sure that our voices are heard and not silenced. We're excited about what can happen on the national level in Washington now that we finally have an ally in the White House. And we're working with one of the most labor-friendly presidential administrations. Sisters and brothers, including our own former mayor, are now a card-carrying member as our Secretary of Labor. You bet your life. With all of these incredible partners and allies, sisters and brothers, we have the ability to bring a revolution to our labor movement by strengthening our collective bargaining rights, by organizing new industries and younger workers, and by defeating deep-pocketed corporate billionaires who are trying to strip away our voices and try to put us back 3 generations. And it is unacceptable. And the AFT has always been fighting right beside us. Sisters and brothers, it was just a few years ago that we had to fight back against that Janus decision that protected workers' rights. And they almost gutted it in every state across the country. But they weren't successful because organized labor had great leadership, and organized labor stuck together and told people why it's important to be a union member. Let me be clear, that victory would never have been possible without the American Federation of Teachers Union. And I'll tell you what, we're very well represented on the Mass AFL-CIO board. Right down here we have Beth Contis, who is a star trade unionist, not only in her union, but in the Labor Council in the North Shore. A leader and a mentor to so many people. Her top assistant is Brant Duncan. Nobody better, who watches the money and does what he's supposed to do to have Bet's back. And of course, we heard from Jessica Tang, working hand in hand with the mayor when the governor's trying to privatize, or not privatize, but trying to take over the schools. She stood up against them. She fought for the rights of the students. And sisters and brothers, between Jess and her and Beth, they were successful. We need to keep fighting, sisters and brothers, whether it's across the country or right here in Massachusetts. We must continue to fight for the PRO Act. Our entire congressional delegation has supported this legislation, passed the House. We're 1 vote short in the Senate. We need to keep working that. It is the best legislation that we have ever seen in the last 2 generations. Sisters and brothers, here in Massachusetts, we have what they call the Fair Share Amendment. It's a millionaire's tax. You make over $1 million, that is $20,000 a week. Who makes over $20,000 a week in this room? You bet your life. Well, all we want, after you make $1 million, 4 cents on every dollar after that. Do you think that's fair? You bet your life. And it's earmarked towards transportation and education, 2 very important issues for infrastructure. The Massachusetts labor movement is strong, sisters and brothers, and it's strong because of each and every one of you. And I want to end today by talking about another revolutionary leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, who studied here in Boston in the 50s. And in 1956, Martin Luther King said something that is my favorite quote. In my opinion, it's as good as the Our Father. And he said very simply, sisters and brothers, I want you to listen to this because I love it and I believe in it. As you press on for justice, be sure to move with dignity and discipline, using only the weapon of love. Let no man pull you so low as to hate him. Always avoid violence. If you succumb to the temptation of using violence in your struggle, unborn generations will be the recipient of a long and desolate future, and your chief legacy will be an endless reign of meaningless chaos. God bless you. Have a great convention. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be before you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Greetings from AFT Secretary Treasurer Frederick Ingram.
AFT! We can do better than that. Is AFT in the house? When I say one day longer, you say one day stronger. One day longer. One day longer. One day longer. When I say who's got the power, you say we've got the power. Who's got the power? Who's got the power? One more time. Who's got the power? And all power to the people. Thank you all very much. Give yourselves a big round of applause for being in Boston, Massachusetts. And good morning again. My name is Frederick Ingram, and I am proud and honored to serve as your Secretary Treasurer. I welcome you to our convention today. It is so exciting to be with you in Boston for what I know is going to be an exciting and event-filled AFT convention. We've already had a great community event yesterday with our Reading Opens the World bookmobile, giving books out at the family fair, thanks to AFT Massachusetts and Boston Teachers Union, who hosted the event. Let's give them a big round of applause. And before I start, I want to give a quick shout out to fellow Floridians and fellow music educators, Treva Burke-Harrell and Dr. Edward Robinson, for starting us off with those two inspiring anthems. Let's give them a big round of applause. AFT member, Treva Burke-Harrell. As you know, we are going green. We are printing less and doing more things electronically. So I encourage you to download the convention app. If you have not done so already, please do so. Download the app. It'll make your life a little bit easier. You'll find the latest information on the speakers, event locations, and meeting room numbers. I also want to encourage you to text Convention 22. Again, that's Convention 22 to 69238. Text Convention 22 to 69238 and get any alerts and convention updates to your phone. Now, I want to go over some housekeeping items and important reminders for us all. Safety. Safety at this convention is our highest priority. There are about 3,000 of us in this convention hall today, and we want to make sure all 3,000 of us stay safe and healthy while we conduct the important business of our union. With that in mind, I want to remind everyone that you must wear a mask that fully covers your mouth and your nose at all times in the convention center, except when you are actively eating. Also, we should have all downloaded the Clear Health app, uploaded our vaccination cards, and took our COVID test. Now, we know that there have been some hangups and some glitches, but we'll continue to work through that process. Don't forget that each day of the convention, you must fill out the daily health survey of the Clear Health app and answer just a few questions. Wearing your mask properly and taking the daily survey will help keep all of us safe. And remember, you received a second COVID test when you registered, which you must take before you come into the convention center on Saturday. In addition to always wearing your mask, please always wear your badge, no matter where you are in the convention center, whether it is here in the hall or out in the activist hub or in a resolution committee meeting or at a luncheon or reception or an event. You must wear your badge. There will be no admittance to any event if you do not have your badge. I also want to remind you that we need to take precautions against right-wing operatives who use unlawful tactics to demonize our members and our union. They want to spread disinformation to basically destroy the labor movement. So make sure you're aware of your surroundings, who you're speaking with, especially outside of the convention center, at restaurants and at other gatherings. And speaking of information, we are all aware of the dangers and onslaught of misinformation and disinformation that we face every day from social media, but especially our students and our kids. To combat this, I urge you to check out the unprecedented partnership we have with NewsGuard to provide all AFT members with free access to NewsGuard's leading media literacy tool to assess the reliability of online news and information, distinguish between fact and fiction, and disclose ownership, financing, and potential conflicts of interest by content providers. NewsGuard offers a media literacy browser extension and mobile app that gives users real-time access to traffic light news ratings and detailed nutrition label reviews describing the credibility of thousands of news and information websites. This is an incredibly powerful tool that the AFT is providing for you, your students, and your families. So I urge you to find out more at the Activist Hub or at newsguardtech.com/AFT. Now, our code of conduct. The AFT Executive Council has adopted the AFT Code of Conduct, which prohibits discriminatory, harassing, or otherwise unacceptable behavior in the workplace and at any AFT activity, event, or meeting, even if the conduct has not risen to a violation of law. There will be zero tolerance for harassment of any form, including but not limited to uses of racial epithets, slurs, negative stereotyping, jokes, or threatening, intimidating, or hostile acts that relate to sex, race, age, disability, or protected categories. This behavior will be called out. The AFT takes these complaints seriously and may, at its discretion, take action that it deems necessary to assess the situation. Possible responses may include a warning to or expulsion of the alleged offender from the AFT activity, event, or meeting. The AFT is a democratic organization that values open and vigorous discussion of the issues facing the AFT, our members, working people, and the labor movement. The Code of Conduct is not intended to restrict free and open debate, but rather it is intended to ensure a positive and respectful environment that is free of discrimination and harassment, regardless of any individual's race, ethnicity, religion, color, sex, age, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, gender identity or expression, ancestry or pregnancy, or any other characteristic protected by law. We ask all meeting participants to conduct themselves consistent with the values of equity and equality. The AFT encourages you to report any offending conduct as soon as possible. There will be no retaliation or adverse action taken against an individual who makes a complaint. All reports may be made to Lynn Person, Human Resources Deputy Manager, Tier Jones, Assistant to the President for Organizational Management, David Strom, our General Counsel, or a designated manager of the particular meeting, or any other supervisor or manager. And their contact information is up on the screens. And now, it is my great honor to welcome our 62 international guests from more than 23 countries and international organizations who have joined us this year. As you can imagine, international travel is not easy on account of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, making gas prices and airline tickets very, very expensive. So we appreciate our international family making the effort to travel and share their experiences with us so we can all learn from each other. With our international guests, all please stand and let's give them an AFT round of applause. Again, thank you all for being here with us. And this week, the international delegation is here studying cutting-edge advancements in technology that will affect the workforce in education and the public sector. It's a collaborative effort between the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the AFT, and the Albert Shanker Institute, and it's really, really important work. Our international delegates will also be tackling the major issue of challenges and threats to democracy at home and abroad. Of course, our unions have always been on the front lines of the fight for democracy, whether it's here at home over voting rights or waged abroad over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Educators and other public sector workers will always be there to meet the challenge of safeguarding democratic values and institutions. Again, thank you to our international guests. Okay, a few more housekeeping things. Now, you already know, or some of you may know, that we will be joined tomorrow by the First Lady of the United States of America. Our dear friend, Dr. Jill Biden, will be joining us tomorrow. We're all excited to host her. I do want to take this opportunity to remind you that security will be different and it will be tight. Everyone will need to go through magnetometers as well to enter the hall. So please make sure you're not carrying any unnecessary gear with you. It will take some time to get into the hall, so please make sure you arrive early. And finally, it is now my great pleasure to introduce a video greeting from a man who we are proud to call our 46th President of the United States. He has helped to lead our country in a time of great peril with calm, steady, and reasoned leadership. President Joe Biden is a friend to all educators, school staff, public employees, and health professionals because he values the service to our nation that we all perform. He is also staunchly committed to our American democracy and to preserve all Americans' civil liberties and rights. Without further ado, a message to you from the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
My friend Randi Weingarten and all at the American Federation of Teachers, I'm proud to stand by you. I've been with you from the beginning. As Dr. Jill Biden's husband, I know teaching isn't what she does. Teaching is who Jill is and who all of you are. You got us through the pandemic, educators, nurses going above and beyond the call. I know as soon as I got into office, the first thing we needed to do was invest in you, teachers. $130 billion from the American Rescue Plan to improve ventilation systems, hire more teachers and counselors, increase after-school and tutoring programs, expand summer programs, which kids are benefiting from right now. We're reforming the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Even if you previously applied and were denied, please go to studentaid.gov to see if you qualify for temporary changes that expire on October 31st. Go to that, please. Over 1 million borrowers have already benefited. And it's also a key part of my unity agenda that's addressing the mental health crisis as well. A big driver of that crisis is the epidemic of gun violence. Jill and I visited families and educators at Uvalde, an experience we will never forget, having talked to every one of the parents and families involved. Their message was very plain and simple. They look at pleading and say, just do something, please do something. And a few weeks ago, we did just that. I signed into law the most significant bipartisan gun safety legislation in 30 years. But you know, there's more to do across the board, from tripling funding for low-income schools through Title I to protecting your right to bargain collectively. You are the kite strings that lift our national ambitions aloft. We owe you. I have your back, I promise you. Stay safe. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Please welcome to the stage AFT Executive Vice President Evelyn DeJesus.
Buenos dias. Good morning, AFT. I can't hear you. Good morning, AFT. So, I am Evelyn de Jesus, the AFT Executive Vice President. Wasn't that an inspiring message from our president? And we are going to have an even more inspiring message from our union president very shortly. I know I'm very excited about it. We have a great program and a great convention ahead of us. I am so excited to be here with all of you. It has been too long since we have all been together. I just want to give a quick reminder that each of the bathrooms have family and gender-neutral bathrooms. There are additional gender-neutral bathrooms throughout the center, and we'll get these locations to you. One is here, and one is over there. As you remember, we held our last convention in 2020 virtually. At that convention, our fearless AFT Secretary-Treasurer, Loretta Johnson, retired after a long and distinguished career. Since we did not get to celebrate her and her career the way we wanted back then, but we are sending her off in style here in Boston, where we can all congratulate her in person, give her a big hug, and tell her how much she means to all of us. We will be honoring Loretta at the Human Rights Luncheon, and I know we are all very much looking forward to it. We are also joined by former AFT Executive Vice President Francine Lawrence. Thank you for coming, and it's just so good to see you with us here today, Fran. I want to encourage everyone to come to the delegate reception this evening. This is a great way to reconnect with old friends that you have not seen in a while and meet new colleagues from all across the country. And you will also get a chance to meet our international guests, which have been just introduced, who have worked so hard to join us this year. How often do you get a chance to meet someone from Ukraine? I know we are all happy to be together and have something fun to celebrate. Because, let's face it, these last 2 years have been hard on all of us. Many of us, like me, have experienced COVID firsthand. I have now contracted COVID twice, so I know how scary it could be. And even if you did not contract COVID, the pandemic has forced us all to adapt and change the way we teach, the way we work, we live, and interact with one another. None of us will ever be the same. This terrible pandemic has taken a toll on us physically, emotionally, and pushed many of us to the breaking point. We have seen our loved ones suffer. We have seen the effects it has had on our communities, our workplaces, our hospitals, and our clinics, our colleagues in universities, our schools, and our classrooms. We have lost far too many loved ones, colleagues, and community members. I'd like us to take a moment and remember in particular the AFT leaders that we have lost since our last convention and honor them with a moment of silence. Thank you. They will never be forgotten. And now I'd like to share with you a sweet greeting sent to us by our Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. Then we will go right into a video highlighting the incredible work that all of you and our union have done for the last 2 years to care, fight, show up for our members, for our patients, for our students, and to reclaim our future for all Americans. Let's take a look.
Hello and congratulations on your 87th convention. To every educator, nurse, school staff member, state and local government employee, professor, and all AFT members, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because of you, our country's recovery is possible. You truly make a difference. And America needs you more than ever as we recover from the pandemic and recent tragedies in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. Our work ahead must focus on continuing to meet all students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs. Importantly, this responsibility cannot fall on educators alone. What we learned throughout the pandemic, and what you already know, is that we need each other to come back stronger than ever. It takes a whole village. We need whole communities involved, and we need to have your back. I'm proud that the Biden-Harris team is putting actions behind those words. We are working to ensure school communities are safe. As a country, we've made a step in the right direction with the president recently signing the Safer Communities Act. I'm grateful for those in Congress who had the courage to take meaningful action. This bipartisan bill provides billions in funding to support safe and healthy students, hire school-based health professionals, and strengthen the pipeline into the school-based health profession. We are also putting action behind our belief that to lift the profession and to show it the respect it deserves, we must make your salaries competitive, improve working conditions, and elevate your voice as we reimagine together. One way we are doing this is by investing in educator recruitment, retention, and professional development. We're helping schools hire more counselors, mental health professionals, social workers, and tutors. And we're getting our public servants much-needed student loan relief. Thank you, AFT, for hosting over 150 public service loan forgiveness clinics and helping your members apply. Already, we've identified nearly 145,000 borrowers eligible for an average of $65,000 in loan relief. That's over $8 billion, with more than 1 million additional borrowers on the road to forgiveness. Don't miss that October 31st deadline for public service loan forgiveness. And please enjoy the convention. Celebrate each other. You must take time for yourselves to recharge, even as you're thinking about the new school year. Take time for yourselves. Together in this moment, when it matters most, we're shaping a brighter future for our students. Thank you.
You've got something special inside.
This week we've been honoring frontline healthcare workers fighting the pandemic.
You don't have to hide.
There's a widespread perception in our community that COVID is a hoax.
There's a lot that we've been through the pandemic.
It's registering with the hospital how angry and frustrated people are.
That's why they don't have a sign that says thank the CEO. They have a sign that says thank the heroes.
Got everything you need, and you don't have to be afraid. You just gotta keep on pressing.
We are grateful to our teachers in this pandemic.
The teachers have just stepped up. Our frontline hero is Ryan's art teacher.
The whole class wanted to thank you.
You saw a lot of gratitude. And then you saw the politics.
They're basically refusing these teachers to go to work for what is a bad cold. Sitting at home in their athleisure wear.
You know, sluggish cat ladies in sweats stained with chocolate eclairs.
We kept all the kids out of school.
We've been trying to get kids back into school throughout the country.
The union doesn't want the teachers in the classroom.
You're actually not listening to me.
But this false narrative that teachers want schools closed is absolutely just that, fiction.
I know it's very divided right now, so just thank you for going out on a limb for us.
We as a national union gave grants to locals all over the country. Almost $5 million to places that involve 1,800 locals in 30 states, involving communities of 20 million kids.
This is our back to school Safe Start celebration.
Best part is seeing some of my students that I haven't seen all summer. I've been messaging them, telling them to come on over, and just seeing them show up and get their school supplies, maybe get their vaccine as well.
With their teachers nearby, I think their hesitancy goes way down.
Today we're knocking on doors and finding out what they're feeling on returning back to school. Make sure it's a safe and good experience.
This is is about making sure our kids can recover.
I am so glad that we are back in class.
That's where we get our energy from. That's what it's all about.
It's exciting for Malcolm X to host Reading Opens the World event.
Why do you like to read?
I like to read because you can put anything to your mind.
We gotta make sure that all kids have books at home. This is the reason we're giving out 1 million books.
It's super exciting to me that we're kind of getting back into the science of reading.
So my children, they must have books, and the union stepped up to the plate.
43,000 books are going out the door.
I was like, I want to cry right now. These are brand new books, and there's different titles. Some of the titles look like me.
It's another Spider-Man book.
Literacy is at its core. It's democracy, it's freedom, it's justice. It's why we do what we do every day.
Our partnership with the AFT, we can imagine a powerful academic labor movement.
Nearly 150 medical tech workers and therapists at St. Charles Bend approved their first union contract.
It was not easy.
We're just really excited to get some voice for the technologists.
We were told it was illegal for us to start a union in Kentucky, and we found that actually we could start a union, and so we did.
Because we want what's best for our students and for our working conditions and what's best for the overall state.
Today, the governor signed a bipartisan bill that gives all public school teachers a $10,000 raise.
Because I believe in our educators.
You don't talk the talk, you walk the walk. This is our future. We're on strike for the dignity of teachers. We're on strike for the dignity of parents. Here we are!
There's 9,000 reasons to fund a fair contract because our students deserve better.
I want my son to be able to go to preschool. I went to the preschool program that was cut.
It's a lack of respect. They totally disregard all of us.
I still live at home with my parents because I cannot afford to get a house and all my bills at the same time.
Our rally was way more than what we expected. We had members of the community, we had politicians, we had co-workers, we had families of co-workers, we had retirees coming out. What we were asking for is to be able to take quality care of our patients.
Can you hear us now?
We make $20,000 a year, which is just not enough to sustain life in Chicago. TAs do 50% of the teaching labor at UIC.
And we don't feel like as workers, we should have to pay our employer anything.
You don't want to pay to work anymore.
We are going to win through our collective power because there is power in a union and you are the union!
What the ESPs are looking for is a living wage.
None of us really want to be out here, but if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything.
All of these horrible conditions and terrible circumstances have led to a newfound sense of unity that I don't see us walking back from.
One of our union members is one of the people who started this memorial.
Collective bargaining in action works, just like protest works.
Justice and freedom must apply to all.
There's no more trying.
George Floyd could have been anybody. What we know in the union movement is that there is strength and power in numbers. This is about the power of us.
Are you willing to make sure when the people vote, they will be heard? We are here today to celebrate something magical. Just about half an hour ago, I greeted dozens of Texans. Can you imagine dozens of Texans who are attending a Together We Rise citizenship clinic, submitting their applications to become citizens of the United States of America.
We lost 2 members, Pearl Young and the police officer, Aaron Salter. They were both fantastic people. Racism is not going to be tolerated.
We have parents, we have teachers. We're going to talk about our lived experience.
My daughter, the day after that it happened, she came home crying and she said, "Mommy, will that happen to us? Could I die? Am I going to die?"
We were here 10 years ago with Sandy Hook. What has changed? Nothing. Right now is the moment to create change.
It's a fight for our lives. There was a shooting, 15 shots, and a man dead right there on the playground in front of the school building.
They survived the shootings. They are here to fight to make sure it never happens again.
Thank you to the American Federation of Teachers who are marching with us and into November and beyond.
Teachers need to be a part of this conversation. We're going to keep marching till we get to where we need to get to, till it stops.
We need a change and we need it now. I cannot wait to see us cross the finish line on November 3rd.
Are you ready to defeat chaos, to defeat division, to defeat fear?
Is about rebuilding the backbone of this country and giving people in this nation, working people, middle-class folks, a fighting chance.
Okay, here we go.
We have settled our lawsuit on public service loan forgiveness. Every borrower, if they believe the denial was wrong, they're going to have a process for it to be reviewed.
Since the settlement, I've gotten forgiven over $73,000. There's a huge weight coming off my shoulders.
So thank you. We did it. AFT, we did it. It was all for those who don't have a voice, and that's why we have our union.
AFT spent millions of dollars on N95 masks and other supplies in order for nurses around the nation to be safely protected.
The union has been amazing. I have felt so supported and loved by them, knowing that they will fight for what we need.
I would just like to say I'm thankful for solidarity through every level of the union. No matter what this local its members needed, we're able to reach out with open lines of communications, and everybody's willing to help.
This is a building that's more than a building, it's a symbol of hope and of renewal and of rebuilding. That's the lesson of Reconnect McDowell.
2, 3.
It's the lesson of partnership, listening intensely and intentionally to the community's needs.
I haven't had an experience that so clearly demonstrated the power of a union. If you were in a union during this pandemic, you had a say.
Our union got together, it fought together, it worked together. Because our members, just like they've been the front line of this COVID crisis, they were the front line of that fight to keep respect and dignity. That's what a union does. It's about making sure that we can solve the problems of today and tomorrow.
Good morning, delegates. Good morning, state workers. Good morning, healthcare workers. Good morning, higher education workers. Good morning, K-12 workers. Good morning. My name is Stacey Davis Gates. I am the mother of 3 public school students, Kevin, Hazel, and Laura. I am the wife of a veteran of our armed services. I am a daughter of a Teamsters and a Baptist preacher.
I've warned you. And I am the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. I bring you greetings from the south side of Chicago in the spirit of two legendary leaders, Jackie Vaughn and Karen Lewis. I bring you greetings from Chicago, from our dear brother who just left us, Jesse Sharkey. I am proud to represent the freedom fighters and caretakers of Chicago, our paraprofessionals, our clinicians, our teachers, the mighty Chicago Teachers Union, AFT Local 1. Make some noise for AFT. So I come here to talk about Chicago and Randi Weingarten. And what you must know is that in Chicago, we believe that our power is in the rank and file. We believe in the radical love of Black children, brown children, the neighborhoods they live in and the families they come from. We believe that our power is in common good bargaining, that we have to strike if necessary to win the things that those children need, their communities need, their families need, and all of our workers need. And in Chicago, we believe that Black lives matter. We believe, yes. And we also believe in sanctuary for our undocumented workers, for our students and their families. And in Chicago, we also believe in police-free schools staffed with school social workers, staffed with school counselors, staffed with school psychologists. And in Chicago, we believe in the protection and support of our LGBTQIA+ siblings. We believe in the plural pronoun, and we know that when we fight, we do what? And we believe that in the humanity of people and equity and justice. And sometimes you gotta fight for that because they don't give it up freely in this country. So in 12 and 16 and 19 and 21 and in 22, and did I say 2018? We had to make our bosses, the mayors and the charter bosses, put it in writing. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without the solidarity and partnership of our dear sister, Randi Weingarten. Our sister, she embodies the principles of this union, a union created to uplift, empower, and fight. Did I say fight? For our humanity and for our democracy. She's been there when we took to the streets to beat back privatization in 2012. She was there in 2016 when we had a financial crisis we were staring down. She was there in 2018 when we took the first charter school strike in this country. And she was there in 2019. She was there to help us win sanctuary protection, class size limits, a nurse and a social worker in every single Chicago public school. But here's our magic. Here's our magic, you all. Randi translates a union in Chicago that fights for racial, social, economic, and educational justice. And she does it in the White House, and she does it on Capitol Hill. She does that. And when we mourn the loss of our North Star, our guiding light, CTU President Karen Lewis, Randi was also there. So let me tell you, if you're ever in a fight, if you ever need a friend, if you ever need a translator, if you ever need a hug, you get to call our dear sister Randi Weingarten. And now I'm gonna bring up my other dear sibling, Mr. Richard House, Hills Teacher Association. Richard?
Good morning, AFT. My name is Rich Haas. I'm the president of the Half Hollow Hills Teachers Association out on Long Island in New York. It's nice to be here. So before we get started, I need to own something. I know that there's this unspoken rule that you are never supposed to wear a band's t-shirt to its own concert. And I'm here right now rocking my Weingarten v. DeVos shirt, right? And I know that I'm breaking that social rule. And in my defense, I have to say that this t-shirt actually came with $20,000. So I never got that at a Dave Matthews t-shirt or concert. So $20,000 is what I still owed in student debt last fall after 21 years of teaching. It's what I was told years ago would not qualify for any type of loan forgiveness. And it's what I'd probably still be paying off when my kids go to college if it weren't for the fierce advocacy of our amazing union and our relentless president. So I'm proud to wear my band t-shirt here today, not just because AFT saved my family $20,000, but because in our local, they saved Barry $15,000. And they saved Marianne $25,000, and Aaron $34,000, and Heather $40,000, and Nancy $70,000. Not just because HHHTA members have already had $250,000 forgiven since February of this year, but because we now have dozens and dozens of members seeking forgiveness. And our union's goal, our little local out on Long Island, is to save them $1 million by the end of this year. It's a lot of money. Every time another member's debt gets erased and we help them on that journey, we send a little piggy bank image to all of our members through email and social media, and we update the dollar amount on it, and we let people know we just fed the pig again today. So it's never felt better to seek forgiveness. When I think about all the campaigns we've been involved in, all the pickets, recarding, school closures, budget fights, contract negotiations, I can't think of many things that we do that can have such a profound and immediate impact on our members. I mean, how many of us have dug in at a bargaining table for months over a 0.5% raise? Or to keep health insurance contributions down by 1%, or squeeze a few dollars out of club pay? And while it can feel harder every bargaining session and every legislative session to protect and expand the promises once given to people like us who chose to commit ourselves to public service, PSLF, for many of our members, can be a new promise. But we have to start now to bring it to our people, and then continue our advocacy to make sure it becomes something future generations of our members can count on. Now, I'm sure you get so many campaign emails from affiliates and coalition partners that it's completely impossible to organize around all the great advocacy work that's being done. And I completely get it. We're all in that boat. But PSLF, if you haven't already gotten on it, has to be one that your unions jump on right now before it's too late. As the Secretary shared in his video a few seconds ago, unless it's extended, the window to apply for loan forgiveness could end this October. So, shameless plug here, if you haven't already done it, check out the loan forgiveness tables that are downstairs, upstairs, overstairs, wherever they are in this huge convention hall, and kick your ground game into high gear this fall. Sisters and brothers, let's crush this one. After all, $20,000 buys a lot of gas and groceries. So, thank you again, Randi, AFT, Secretary Cardona, the Biden administration, and now I have the pleasure of calling onto this stage Vice President of the Public Employees Federation, Darlene Williams.
Wow, good morning. So I'm going to stand first on a point of personal privilege. Just want to shout out my family in this room. Where's my PEF people at? All right. Thank you. So a leader is one who knows the way, who goes the way, and shows the way. Leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about one influencing another. Randi, thank you for influencing me. That statement was by John Maxwell. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm taking you back to April or May of 2020, when many frontline essential workers were dropping to their knees, sick or dying from an illness we didn't know, nor did we understand. Each day, we were listening to Dr. Fauci's reports for the need to mask up. Hospital workers were in need of personal protective equipment. At that time, I worked at a mental health facility. I would wear the same surgical mask for weeks on end, with no sign of relief. Our morale was low, and life was very scary. But then I got a call from AFT President Wayne Spence. He asked me to go meet Randi Weingarten, and that she would give me a couple of boxes of surgical masks. So I figured I'm gonna go and get 4 or 5 boxes of surgical masks. So I quickly cleaned out the back of my car and headed to the AFT office in the Bronx. When I arrived, I walked in a room and saw thousands of boxes of surgical masks and became overjoyed seeing this stockpile of face shields, gloves, and the ever-lasting KN95 mask. I was blown away and overwhelmed with what that meant and how it was going to impact the members and their families. We had hope for the first time during their pandemic. That thought alone still today makes me very emotional. Many of us work for 12 to 16 hours with little to no PPE. I stood in that room looking at that stockpile of hope, remembering the people who died. But that room showed optimism, and it showed that we were going to survive. This gift of hope came from President Randi Weingarten. I will never forget what Randi said that day. Union dues are now being devoted to protect the protector and save lives because the federal government wouldn't do its job. So Randi, you became our supply clerk. You negotiated the equipment from around the world because our members were sick. Our colleagues and our loved ones were dying, and the government failed to protect us. So when they wouldn't do it, our union stepped up. Our union stepped up and got us what we needed. Randi's words matched her walk. Her efforts, her impact helped countless lives of all of us. Understanding the impact of what the disease could do, Randi, at that moment, you became my superhero. So I said this to Mark Richard the other day. One day I may lose my mind. I hope I don't, but I may lose my mind one day. But if I do, I ask God to help me to remember 3 important things in my life. I want to remember the birth of my 2 sons. I don't want to remember the pain, but I want to remember the birth of my 2 sons. I want to remember the last words my mother said to me of love before she died. And I want to remember when AFT and PEF stepped up to save us during a deadly pandemic in 2020. So some of you are going to understand this. Randy, that day I couldn't give you a hug, but I want to say to you now that you have a permanent place at my backyard barbecue. You don't need to bring the potato salad, but you got a permanent place at my backyard barbecue. So please, I want to welcome Detroit Federation of Teachers President Terrence Martin to the stage. Thank you.
Good morning, AFT delegates. Good morning, AFT delegates. And in Detroit, when we greet each other, we say, "What up, doe?" Can I get a what up, doe? My name is Terrence Martin. I'm the president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers. And like many of you, I'm a parent of a public school student. This year, my son will be continuing tackling the challenges of being a high school student in America. And just like other high school students, he wants to be cool and blend in with the students and create TikTok videos. But as a father, I want something different, a little different for him. I want my son to be a kind person and the best student he can possibly be. And importantly, I want him to attend a public school that is safe, welcoming, and equipped with the well-supported educators, wraparound services to meet the social and emotional needs of students, and a place that teaches an accurate account of our country's bittersweet history. I want my son to attend a public school that looks like schools attended by the rich, the elite, and the well-off. Because let's face it, every student deserves to attend a high-quality neighborhood public school. The quest to empower the next generation of America is why I became an educator many years ago. And that is why I've continued the fight for high-quality public education in Detroit and throughout America. In the years leading up to 2015 and 2016, the Detroit public schools were under siege by an undemocratic emergency manager law, disinvestment, and deplorable school conditions that made national news. As a result, teachers and educators of Detroit are survivors and fighters against the willful neglect of a state government that cared very little about Detroit families. During the fight in Detroit, we had many allies. One of those was you, the members and leaders of the American Federation of Teachers. Thank you. Thanks to President Randi Weingarten, the fantastic staff of the AFT, the leadership of our state federation, and the solidarity of the 1.7 million educators, healthcare professionals, and government employees, we fought back. And guess what? We won. Today, our classrooms are better resourced. Our schools are under the control of an elected school board. The DFT is strong, and our students are thriving. Together, we reclaim Detroit Public Schools. And that fight taught me that there is nothing we can achieve together. So let's continue our work as a union reclaiming this country for the future, school by school, city by city, state by state, the push to reclaim our schools in Detroit, the struggle to end the unholy burden of student loan debt, the battle for racial equality and social justice, both inside and outside the classroom, and the push to make the union one driven by solidarity has one thing in common. They all are blessed with a strong national force fighting on their behalf. And that force is Randi Weingarten. Her work has amplified educators' voice, empowered bargaining tables around the country, and has shown the nation that public education voters matter at the ballot box. So delegates and guests, stand to your feet. Stand to your feet. And join me as we welcome that ally. Put your hands together and show your love for that friend, for that force, our national president, Randi Weingarten.
I know I gotta take the damn mask off. This is our union. You are our union. To Stacy and Richard and Darlene and Terrence, this is what you do every day. And I just can't thank you enough for that. It's union work. And then, our member, Trevor, that national anthem, both national anthems. And she's a music teacher in Miami. And the workers in this hall, they are all union. And one of them, I'm gonna start crying. One of them said to me as I was backstage, she pulls me over and she says, "Thank you for being here. You're making sure we have work." It's our union. And Boston, and that amazing new contract, and having Mayor Wu here talking about you. So look, it's impossible to capture all we have been through the past 2 years. A pandemic and a plot to overturn a presidential election. Mask wars, culture wars, a war on the truth and a war in Ukraine. Floods in Puerto Rico and fires in New Mexico. Shattering
gun violence in Uvalde, Buffalo, Tulsa, Highland Park, and so many other communities. I don't know about you, but Andy, when I saw that part of that video and our trip to Buffalo, I just started crying again. Racism and the fear and trauma it inflicts, an extremist majority on the Supreme Court that eviscerated the Constitution's separation of church and state, overturned Roe, and then hobbled Miranda, the EPA, and states' abilities to keep their citizens safe all in a single month. Oil companies and other corporations reaping, they're probably reeking too, record profits, yet squeezing us dry at the pump in the grocery store. And I haven't even begun to talk about how challenging it's been just to do the work we do and you do, or the people we have loved and lost. Is there anything else that could have been thrown at us? And for all those we have lost, that sorrow never goes away. So please join me for a moment of silence to honor and remember those we have lost. Mothers, brothers, best friends, colleagues, caregivers, people who loved us, people who were loved, and people we loved. The first year of the pandemic was hard, but in many ways this year was harder. It was brutal for public employees. As the need surged for essential services, so did your workloads. The year was brutal for educators. Students returned to campuses and classrooms with enormous needs, and educators, weighted down with more responsibilities, summoned everything you had to help them recover. And it was brutal for nurses and healthcare professionals who have heroically fought the war on COVID. You, the members of our union, have carried the country through the hardest days of the pandemic. You've sacrificed and struggled, and you've brought our students and our communities to a better place. Thank you. Thank you for caring. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for making a difference. Words alone can't express my profound gratitude to you. So we tried to express it by showing up. Fed, Evie, and I, we've been road warriors. Wherever you were, we tried to be there. In schools and bus depots, union halls and coffee shops, hospitals and picket lines. And at last count, I think I've been to more than 150 work sites in the last 14 months. Yes, that does include the picket lines. I see the stress and strain. I see the frustration. But I also see your work, the work to get schools and colleges open, to help students connect and learn, the organizing that made our workplaces safer, the organizing to get the resources we need, the engagement with parents and communities. And I see the attacks on public schools and universities and the people who work in them. Attacks on healthcare personnel, attacks on democracy, attacks on our freedoms.
demagogues playing on fear, fear of the other, fear of change, fear built on false narratives. And the tech companies aren't helping. Social media is weaponizing this hatred and division. Being online can be like swimming with sharks, most alarmingly for our kids. And too many politicians are making it worse. And you know the politicians I'm talking about, the ones who stoke grievances rather than solve problems. They should be helping us help kids and communities, not making it harder with their culture wars and division. Frankly, in times like this, I lean on my faith. I often tease that my wife is a rabbi, and she's sitting right here. Thank you, Sharon, for being here. But seriously, I think a lot about the Bible story of Esther, who also lived in troubled time, when those in power sought to maintain their privilege through oppression. And at a pivotal moment, a reluctant Esther was told, "You have been put here for such a time as this. You've been put here for such a time as this." And she acted. She acted. My friends, so must we. Now, this certainty comes not only from the faith I was raised in, but my faith in you, in us, and in our movement. We are here for a reason. So here's how I see it. And some of you have heard me say this. This moment can be viewed through the lens of fear or hope, despair or aspiration, self-interest or the greater good. And the members of our union definitively, defiantly, and undeniably choose hope, aspiration, and the greater good. That's who you are. So when the last administration's response to COVID was chaotic and reckless, our members were on the front lines, putting themselves and their loved ones at risk, and we haven't stopped. When healthcare corporations put profits over patients, we made safety and care for patients and providers the priority. So, as you heard from Darlene, when nurses and healthcare personnel had to resort to wearing garbage bags as protective gear, the AFT scoured the globe, and I mean the globe, and we bought $3 million worth of PPE for our members. And now, we're fighting for safety and respect and the contract language to enforce it, from the Washington State Nurses Association Fight for Safe Staffing, and I saw the Washington State nurses here earlier, to the strikes at Bacchus Hospital in Connecticut, Jersey Shore University Medical Center, you know that that is in New Jersey, and in Bend, Oregon. When others played blame games during the pandemic, our members rolled up our sleeves and made in-person learning safe and welcoming. The AFT embarked on an unprecedented Back to School for All campaign last summer, giving $5 million in grants to 1,800 AFT affiliates, many of whom are in this room, serving 20 million students. We stood up, you stood up, in-person summer school. We answered families' questions. We provided mobile vaccination clinics and after-school reading support, and we worked to create safe and welcoming environments for our students from pre-K to college. When culture warriors tried to prevent teachers from teaching honest history, we stood up and stand up for teaching the truth, the good, the bad, and the mountains we climbed. Between Share My Lesson, the Shanker Institute, and as Fed talked about, AFT's partnership with NewsGuard for media literacy, we are supporting our members to teach civics and honest history so that young people can reckon with our past, understand our present, and create a better future. And as I announced last summer, the AFT has a legal defense fund for any member who is punished for teaching the truth. When privatizers try to end public education as we know it, we defend public education as the public good it is, and we fight for the learning conditions you and our students need. We pressed for President Biden's American Rescue Plan with $170 billion to enable schools and colleges to open safely, to support students with disabilities, to hire and retain essential school staff. And then, at the ground level, as Stacy said, because that is where it happens, locals from Minneapolis to St. Paul, from Scranton to Providence, from Los Angeles to New York, have won vital student supports like school nurses, mental health services, guidance counselors, and smaller class sizes. And among the other benefits AFT offers, we have a trauma benefit for all members. You can get the information on the website. We made sure we bought it for everyone. And we also offer, obviously, the support for collective bargaining and for locals in crisis, like Terrence was talking about. When others ignore crushing student debt, which disproportionately hurts young people of color, we give our members the tools to eliminate it. The AFT has held hundreds of student debt clinics, and as you heard from Rich, we went to court. We sued Navient to stop its misleading loan practices, and we sued former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos to fix the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, get this. I want you to hear this number. Borrowers have had, since this past October, $8.1 billion of student debt forgiven so far because of our advocacy around PSLF. That's 145,000 borrowers. We need to make that every single member of our union who has the promise of PSLF. We want to make sure that that promise can be redeemed. Here's just one example. Last month, we helped an AFT member in California wipe out her $450,000 student debt. And now, the entire AFL-CIO is joining us in this fight to cancel student debt. When grandmothers are gunned down at a grocery store or at a July 4th parade, and children and teachers are murdered at school, we demand an end to this carnage and to the gun deaths that occur every day in this country. And more than 100 AFT locals joined our students. I watched with pride all of the marches in New York, all over, and I joined our students at the March for Our Lives rally in Washington. And while not enough, federal common sense gun safety legislation was passed, the first in 3 decades. When people with power try to lock in systems that privilege the few, decimate the middle class, and make every day a struggle for working folks, we fight for a better life for all and for the next generation to do even better. And above all, when people of ill will try to poison our country with fear and anger. We offer a path that lifts everyone up. We fight for everybody's freedoms. We are the antidote to division and despair. That is who we are. Our members in public service, in education, in healthcare, we make a difference in people's lives every single day. That's you. Take our public schools. Students came back with such enormous needs, and you're helping them recover. And Americans know that. In a recent poll, 88% of parents agreed that their child's teachers have done the best they could during these challenging times. So why do we feel under attack all the time? Why are some people blaming us for problems outside of our control, whether caused by the pandemic, poverty, bad policies, or inadequate funding? Why are our opponents going DEFCON 1? Yeah, with sleazy lies about grooming and calling teachers pedophiles? Why are Fox News and some GOP officials spreading these conspiracies and other hateful ideas, which social media then stokes and amplifies? Because the extremists, the anti-public schools crowd, the anti-union crowd, the privatizers, the haters, they see the importance of public schooling as a unifying American value, and they see that Americans value educators. So the extremists plot to change that. We should believe them when they tell us, as Betsy DeVos's pal, Christopher Rufo, did, that to achieve their goal of universal vouchers, they need to be ruthless and brutal, and they need to operate from a premise of universal public school distrust. You see it, he's tweeted it. As our country becomes more diverse, these fear-mongers prey on racial and economic anxieties. They stir up resentment. They create and exacerbate racial and ethnic tribalism. They're promoting despicable conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement Theory, while misrepresenting legitimate academic fields like critical race theory. This is not conservatism, it's extremism. Radical MAGA forces are dividing Americans from each other, spreading lies and hate, and breaking democratic norms to enrich themselves and grab and maintain power. So, how do we uphold decency? How do we bridge these divides? How do we knit the rich tapestry of our country back together? It starts by rebuilding the essential foundations for a better life for all. Essentials like safety. Just as safety has been our North Star to reopen schools and society during the pandemic, safety must now be our North Star to keep our communities and our schools safe from gun violence. Obviously, we must confront the toxic combination of hate and guns. Not by arming teachers, but by getting weapons of war off our streets and out of our schools. Schools must be places where students are known and supported, with access to counselors and mental health professionals, where everyone feels safe, no matter their race, religion, gender identity, ability, or disability. That's why we fight for another essential: sustainable community schools, which help children and families get the health care, food assistance, and other essentials they need in one place. Community schools are hubs that sustain communities. They help rebuild and deepen relationships within and beyond the school, and they make it possible for teachers to teach and for kids just to be kids. And let's make sure that kids have ample recess and play in the school day. Music, arts, sports, student government, robotics, clubs, that's what creates joy. And frankly, and some of you have heard me say this, joy is essential for all of us. And if you've ever heard my wife preach, you'd hear her say, joy is an act of spiritual resistance. The AFT and our affiliates currently support more than 700 community schools nationwide, from Deer River, Minnesota, to Rome, New York, from Boston to Los Angeles. And we have an ambitious goal to expand our union's reach to 2,500 community schools over the next 5 years. And because of our advocacy and the work of champions like Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Appropriations Chair Rosa DeLauro, federal funding for community schools just doubled. Another essential is the knowledge and skills necessary to thrive in today's world. That means a strong foundation in reading, math, and science, and practical life skills and critical thinking. That's why today the AFT is launching our What Our Kids and Communities Need campaign. So while these extremist politicians are trying to drive a wedge between parents and teachers by banning books, censoring curriculum, and politicizing public education, we're focused on investing in public schools and the essential knowledge and skills that our students need. We're focused on accelerating learning, not just catching up. And we're fighting for the conditions that students need, like state-of-the-art buildings with good ventilation, lower class sizes, and mental health resources. And if any politician is listening to this today, if you truly want to help kids thrive, you need to invest in this too. Take reading. Reading not only affects all other academic achievement, it affects and it's essential for well-being. It's key to unlocking assignments in school and passions in life. Through our Reading Opens the World campaign, the AFT, as many of you know, are giving out 1 million books to children and school staffs in communities across America, along with tips to promote literacy and a love of reading. And the reason I know many of you know is because to date, you have distributed more than 612,000 books in events hosted by 127 AFT locals and counting, by the way, in 20 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. And if you've been part of these reading initiatives, you've seen kids and their parents bubble with excitement and joy as they pick out books to take home. So, if during this convention we get requests that surpass 1 million books, we're going to find the funds to give away another 1 million books next school year. And while I'm on the topic of books and reading, can we show some love to the superheroes of the stacks, our librarians? Now, we're working on another essential, career and technical education. From cybersecurity to culinary arts, aviation, auto and transit tech, healthcare and green jobs, High-quality CTE programs can equip young people with the knowledge and skills they need for all these careers. And they make a lot of money in all these careers. Nearly all the young people in CTE programs today graduate from high school, and many of them go to college. Why not have these broad choices for all of our youth? We need pathways, yes, of course, to affordable, accessible college, but we also need pathways to careers. And if Germany can make internships and apprenticeships fundamental parts of their education system, why can't we? And that's why we're envisioning a new career and tech ed center in New Lexington, a rural community in Southeast Ohio. Now, of course, parents and educators must be partners. We don't hope that happens, we make it happen. Like in Los Angeles, where Reclaim Our Schools LA, I heard UTLA, which is a coalition of parents and UTLA and others, won millions of dollars in investments for the Black Student Achievement Plan and to dramatically expand community schools. Yay, UTLA. And then in Chicago, where parents supported CTU's strike for the schools children deserve. In Florida and Texas, where families and educators are joining forces to fight attacks on LGBTQ children. I just heard them. And in New York City, where parents and the UFT have joined forces to lower class size. My home local always has a bet as to how many times I will mention them in a speech. And here in Boston, you just heard it, BTU and the Boston Ed Justice Alliance have won school funding. They stopped the state's threatened district takeover. You had the mayor here, and they have a brand new contract. Thank you, BTU. We're deepening this work through AFT's powerful Partnership Institute, which supports family and community engagement. And this year, we're giving out 20 grants to AFT locals, totaling $1.5 million to further this work. Now, of course, the people who do all of this work are essential. But a recent Gallup poll found that K-12 professionals are the most burnt-out workers in America, and college educators come in second. Teachers and school staff have been struggling for years with a lack of respect, inadequate resources, subpar compensation, and endless paperwork, and then came COVID. Before the pandemic, nearly 300,000 teachers left the profession each year, 2/3 before retirement age. COVID, culture wars, gun violence, and other strains have made teachers' already tough job even harder, driving many people out of the classroom. We have a crisis in the profession that makes all other professions possible. So our union is not just decrying the problem, we're finding solutions. Earlier this year, the AFT created our Teacher and School Staff Shortage Task Force. Yes, we have a teacher shortage. Why? Because we have a shortage of respect for educators. We have a shortage of professional working conditions that allow teachers and other school staff to do their best for students. And we have a shortage of pay for what is arguably the most important job in the world. No wonder teachers' job satisfaction is up 34 points. Job dissatisfaction is up 34 points since the start of the pandemic. The teacher shortage is the direct result of a shortage of conditions, respect, and pay. And we're not going to fix the one without fixing the others. Educators want what students need, but we need the time, the tools, and the trust to do our jobs. So there are 4 key areas that need to change: climate, culture, conditions, and compensation. And I don't know about you, but I just love those billionaires who talk about the virtues of markets, but are stunningly silent when it comes to making educator salaries competitive. So we'll take up the task force recommendations during this convention, and I'm honored that the two chairs of the task force, Carl Williams and Michael Mulgrew, will be presenting that work. Likewise, the AFT's Healthcare Staffing Shortage Task Force is addressing the crisis in healthcare. Working conditions have deteriorated in many healthcare settings for years, if not decades. Violence against healthcare workers is a growing problem that is exacerbated by inadequate staffing. And the strain from the pandemic has created even more burnout, moral distress, and impossible working conditions. Just ask any nurse. This crisis threatens the safety of patients, the stability of the American healthcare system, and the physical, emotional, and mental well-being of healthcare providers. Nearly a third of bedside professionals are contemplating leaving the profession. That number jumps to nearly a half for ICU nurses. And if that doesn't get officials to act, this terrible fact should. Some healthcare workers are twice as likely to die by suicide than the general public. So this week, you'll also consider the resolution put forth by this task force. It calls for, obviously, pay increases, but addressing staffing ratios and safe patient limits, violence in healthcare workplaces, and a ban on mandatory overtime. Now, we know that some staffing shortages are by design. No doubt, some of you remember that anti-tax crusader Grover Norquist, who said he didn't want to abolish government, he just wanted it to be so small he could drown it in a bathtub. And now, rather than use the American Rescue Plan as it was intended to fund essential public services, some politicians are doing just the opposite, which is why our public employees are fighting so hard to fund our future. So this leads me, I know, where is PEF? That's their campaign. Exactly. This leads me to another essential, the fact that everybody needs a raise. And while the latest jobs report and the fact that gas prices are going down are hopeful signs, higher prices hurt. At the pump, grocery stores, and pretty much everywhere. Inflation is gripping the world. COVID has shuttered factories, wreaked havoc on supply chains, and made transporting goods much costlier. And then there's the oil gangsters like Vladimir Putin and the price gouging oil companies who literally have us over a barrel. The top 5 oil companies in the United States reap profits of $35 billion in the first quarter of 2022. That's 300% higher than the year before. You wonder who is exploiting this crisis? Higher prices hurt even more because the federal minimum wage has been just $7.25 since 2009. And so many workers, including many of our adjunct professors, food service workers, and bus drivers, are not even able to afford life's basic necessities. Higher prices hurt because the Republicans in Congress keep blocking efforts to lower the cost of prescription drugs. And they hurt because private equity firms are scooping up real estate, causing the price of rent and homes to skyrocket. And higher prices hurt because employers keep beating back unionization drives, leaving a lot of Americans feeling powerless. There is power in a union. 2/3 of Americans support unions, the highest level since 1965. And nearly half of non-union workers said if they could join a union in their workplace, they would. And young workers are even more enthusiastic about unions. And Joe Biden is the most pro-union American president ever. But today, Americans are 11 times more likely to have an Amazon Prime membership than to have a union card. This is the moment for our movement. Unions built the middle class in America, and we can rebuild it through the transformative power of collective bargaining. The essence of unionism is simple yet powerful. Together, we can accomplish things that would be impossible alone. That's why we're supporting workers at Amazon and Starbucks who want a union, and it's why working people are joining the AFT. 70 new units since our last convention 2 years ago. People who work in charter schools, in libraries, in higher education. It's why AFT and the AAUP just came together in a historic affiliation, and there is unprecedented interest in new organizing in healthcare, including amongst physicians. So look out at this room, or at least I'm looking out at you. I see a union that, despite everything that has been thrown at us, we remain 1.7 million members strong. I see a union, and I see people who, when the Supreme Court tried to destroy us in the Janus decision, we said hell no and AFT yes. I see the people in this hall who are building the fastest growing union in healthcare and higher education. And I see even more than that. I see a union using our power as a force for good, for our members, our families, and our communities, to create a more just and equitable society, and now more than ever, to defend our democracy. Let's remember what democracy is. And I'm sorry, once a social studies teacher, always a social studies teacher. Democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's the rule of the majority. It's power vested in the people and exercised by them through free and fair elections and the peaceful transfer of power. But, and I say this with great fear and sorrow, we may have seen our last free and fair election. Anti-democracy forces worked overtime in advance of the 2020 election to limit voting rights, purging eligible people from voting rolls, limiting who could vote by mail, reducing ballot drop-off locations, and closing polling places so that many voters had to wait hours to cast their ballots. And despite all these obstacles, the American people came out in record numbers in 2020, during a pandemic no less, to vote. President Biden received the most votes ever cast for a U.S. presidential candidate, winning by more than 7 million votes. But instead of celebrating this participation in democracy, anti-democracy forces attacked it. Okay, that was par for the course for Donald Trump. He attacked the free press, he lied pathologically, he winked at white nationalists and homegrown hate movements, he threatened to imprison his political opponents, and he openly invited foreign interference in our elections. But then, you see the picture with Rudy next to him. But then, Trump engaged in the big lie that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him. Remember when he engaged in the birtherism lie? This was the new big lie. Even though he knew there was no evidence then or now to support that lie. And it's shocking, the lengths to which Trump and his allies went to keep power at all costs. He badgered election officials to find him votes. He leaned on the Justice Department to investigate baseless election fraud claims. He hatched a plot to send Vice President Pence fraudulent lectures. And when none of that worked, on January 6th, he sought to lead an armed mob to the United States Capitol to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Our democracy held, but it is in danger. Thanks to the big lie, 7 of 10 Republicans think the 2020 presidential election was stolen. And according to a poll released in June, more than 1/4 of U.S. residents feel it might soon be necessary to take up arms against the government. And these same enemies of democracy who cast doubt on the integrity of the 2020 presidential election are now laying the groundwork to interfere with vote counting and manipulate the outcome of future elections. I know we all read the polls that say inflation and rising prices are the most important issues for voters this November. And obviously, we need to elect leaders who will work to make the economy work for everybody. But look at the plan released by Senator Rick Scott, the chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. If they win the Senate, just listen to this. If they win the Senate, they want to sunset every federal law every 5 years. What do you think that means for civil rights, for Medicare, for Social Security? So friends, our democracy is on the line. Our economic security is on the line, and so are our freedoms. I started today talking about the decisions handed out by the extremist majority of the Supreme Court, including the 3 that Donald Trump appointed. They're legislating from the bench. They're overturning long-standing legal precedents, and they are eviscerating rights. If this is not a 10-alarm fire, I don't know what is. We got one shot at changing this. We must vote in November as if our lives depend on it, because they do. You held up institutions during the pandemic, our healthcare systems, our public schools, our colleges, our public services. Now, we need to hold our democracy together. Elections matter. If we turn the keys back to Mitch McConnell and the MAGA movement, the consequences will be catastrophic. And elections matter at the state and local levels too. Remember Scott Walker? I guess you do. His first act as governor was to strip collective bargaining for state employees in Wisconsin. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker restored bargaining rights for Chicago's teachers. Remember Chris Christie? As governor of New Jersey, he jeopardized public workers' pensions, while current Governor Phil Murphy has ensured their solvency. And in California, Governor Gavin Newsom just funded health care for part-time college faculty. And in New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham launched a moonshot for public education. And look at the difference elections make in school board races and budgets. Like this year, when 99% of the school budgets in New York State were approved. That's not a typo, 99%. And huge majorities of pro-public education candidates won their school board races in Montana, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and New York. So no wonder Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is trying to buy school board seats I guess our feelings about him are known. Trying to buy school board seats, promising $250,000 to any school board candidate who takes his loyalty oath. So we know what to do. Organize, mobilize, just like we did after Janus, just like we do in contract campaigns, just like we did in the 2020 elections. Look, I know we are tired. I know we're exhausted. But if we don't do it, it ain't gonna happen. Remember, we're here for a reason. We have to knock on doors. We have to talk to and listen to people. We gotta organize and mobilize around the issues that keep people up at night. We gotta elect allies who share our goals. And what happens if we don't? Walter Reuther, the legendary president of the UAW, he often reminded people that what the labor movement wins at the bargaining table can be taken away at the ballot box. I don't know how to say this any more plainly. Everything is at risk. Our freedoms, our democracy, our basic economic safety net. How do we turn our aspirations into action? How do we make life better for people? We vote. We march and we vote. We mourn and we vote. We donate and we vote. We make good trouble and we vote. So what do we have to do this November? Say it again. Say it a third time. So, thank you. I talked a lot about the essentials for a better life for all of us. And I want to conclude with what I believe to be the most essential of all. And that's acknowledging the humanity of all people, not just the people we're comfortable with. Now, everyone has been vulnerable in their lives. And as a gay teenager, that feeling of vulnerability rarely left me. And when I realized who I was, I realized I didn't just feel vulnerable, but I was vulnerable. And I felt completely, terrifyingly alone. We've all felt vulnerable in some ways, especially during this challenging time. But for some people, vulnerability is a constant. The mom whose heart races every time her black son goes out at night. The family that fears any knock at the door could be immigration agents coming to separate them. People who have lost their job or who work multiple jobs and still never have enough. People who are immunocompromised, for whom the great unmasking brings fear, not freedom. So maybe my vulnerability makes it easier for me to see the humanity of the gay teacher in Kentucky who left the profession he loves because of who he loves. And maybe it's easier for me to relate to the trans kids who some people hate just because they are being who they are. I know change can be uncomfortable, but we've all been vulnerable. It's a terrible feeling. And I hope that no one would want anyone else to feel that just for being who they are. We all want to be seen. I'm asking us to see each other. We're in a race between hope and fear, between decency and cruelty, between the survival of democracy and the rise of autocracy. And that is why we must act. As the author and activist Grace Paley said, the only recognizable feature of hope is action. And we act every time we encourage someone to vote. We act every time we stand up for what our students need. We act when we all stand together so that none of us feel alone. We act when we step up for working people and the right to a union, and we act when we defend the very survival of American democracy. We've been through a lot, so this summer, recharge, relax, reconnect, and then act. This is a moment to stand up and be counted, to live our convictions, to engage, not withdraw. No matter how tired, no matter how frustrated we are, we cannot be bystanders. Remember Esther, we've been put here for such a time as this. We are here for a reason, to heal, to help, to teach, to vote and get out the vote, to fight for justice and dignity for our children and our country, for our democracy and our freedoms. And that way, we will achieve a better life for all. Thank you very much, AFT.